हरे कृष्णा। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी गोपीजना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदना व्रज जनरंजना यशोदानंदना व्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन लिबर्टी संस्थापक आचार्य जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ षड गोस्वामी प्रभुगण की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। ब्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। द्वारका मथुरापुरी धाम की जय। श्री अयोध्या धाम की जय। गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। कलियुग पावन श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। शिल प्रभुपाद ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2. The chapter is entitled Hiranyakashipu, the King of Demons, verse number 56 and 57. The verse is as follows. Verse number 56. Evam kulingam vilapantamārat priya viyogaturamaśru kantham sa eva tam kunikah sharena divyadhakala prahito vilina. Evam kulingam vilapantamārat priya viyogaturamaśru kantham sa eva tam kunikasharena divyadhakala prahito vilina. Evam kulingam vilapantamārat priya viyogaturamaśru kantham sa eva tam kunikah sharena divyadakala prahito vilina. Word to word translation is as follows. Evam, thus, kulingam, the bird, vilapantam, while lamenting, arat, from a distance, priya viyoga, because of the loss of his wife, aturam, very aggrieved, ashrukantham, with tears in the eyes, sa, he, that hunter, eva, indeed, tam, him, the male bird, shakunikah, who could kill even a vulture, sharena, by an arrow, vivyadha, pierced, kala prahitah, being moved by time, vilina, hidden. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation is as follows. Because of the loss of his wife, the Kulinga bird lamented with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, following the dictations of mature time, the hunter, who was very carefully hidden in the distance, released his arrow, which pierced the body of the Kulinga bird and killed him. There is no purport to this verse, so we move on to the next verse, verse number 57. The verse is as follows. Evam yuyam apashyantya atma payam abuddhayaha nainam prapsyatha shochantya patim varshashatairapi. Translation is as follows. Thus Yamaraj, in the guise of a small boy, told all the queens, "You are all so foolish that you lament but do not see your own death. Afflicted by a poor fund of knowledge, you do not know that even if you lament for your dead husband for hundreds of years, you will never get him back alive, and in the meantime your lives will be finished." Purport is as follows. Yamraj once asked Maharaj Yudhishthir, "What is the most wonderful thing in this world?" Maharaj Yudhishthir replied, this verse is from Mahabharata Vanaparva, 313 chapter, 116 verse. Ahani ahani bhutani gacchanti hayamalayam sheshaha sthavaram icchanti kim ascharyam atah param. Hundreds and thousands of living entities meet death at every moment, but a foolish living being nonetheless thinks himself deathless and does not prepare for death. This is the most wonderful thing in this world. Everyone has to die because everyone is fully under the control of material nature. Yet everyone thinks that he is independent. that whatever he likes he can do, and that he will never meet death but live forever, and so on. So-called scientists are making various plans by which living entities in the future can live forever. But while they are thus pursuing such scientific knowledge, Yamraj in due course of time will take them away from their business of so-called research. Om अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने. नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे. श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्. वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च. श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवम्. श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च. पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम्. नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनाम्ने गौरत्रिसे नमः. हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकाकांत राधाकांत नमोस्तुते. तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto today. The canto is entitled The Science of God. Chapter number 2, Hiranyakashipu, the king of demons. In this chapter we have seen after his brother was killed, Hiranyaksha was killed by Lord Varahadev. Hiranyakashipu was so infuriated and he instructed all his army soldiers, the commanders, to create great disturbance by destroying all the religious places, by destroying the Brahminical culture, by stopping all the sacrifices. And this is the nature of a demoniac person. Whatever welfare activity goes on in the world, the demoniac person wants to stop the welfare activity just to establish their own supremacy and control other people and control the resources in order to gratify their own selfish desires. And another aspect of Hiranyakashipu in fulfilling his own selfish desires was to console his own relatives, the wife of his brother Hiranyaksha, deceased brother Hiranyaksha, Hiranyaksha's sons, his own mother Diti, Hiranyakashipu's own mother Diti, and to appease their bereavement and pacify them. Hiranyakashipu instructs them from the timeless wisdom of the Vedic scriptures. Again, we have been discussing repeatedly that Hiranyakashipu was a personification of all the demoniac, ungodly qualities, and still he is taking the shelter of the Vedas, the message of the Vedas, just to salvage the situation so that everyone in his family all of them are on the same page of fulfilling the selfish, egoistic, gratificatory desires of Hiranyakashipu. And he starts narrating a very fascinating story wherein the king of a kingdom, the name of the king is Suyagya, he dies on the battlefield fighting in the battle, and his wives are besides the dead body of their own husband Suyagya, and they are bitterly lamenting, and they are not allowing the final rites of the king to be performed. And as is the recommendation of the Vedic scriptures, the body of a deceased person has to be cremated according to the Vedic rites, and there is a science behind it. If the body is not cremated, the soul, the Preta Atma of that living entity who has passed away, who has died, who has left the body, his progress to the further destination is halted. He won't get the next body he is destined to get according to his karma unless the cremation rites of the present dead body are performed. So with the queens lamenting bitterly on the battlefield, not allowing the body of their husband to be cremated, Lord Yamaraj, who is the god of death and who presides over the onward journey of all the living entities from one body to another, he comes in the form of a tiny Brahmana boy, and he speaks the wisdom of the eternality of the soul, the laws of karma, how they work, how the living entity transmigrates from one body to another according to the pious or impious credits accrued by the living entity, according to the actions and desires the living entity has. And then Yamaraj, in the form of a very small Brahmana boy, he describes a metaphorical story to the kings, to the queens, and the story is of a hunter who is very adept at killing birds, and it is described that he is just like time personified for the birds, all the animals. He is very cruelly killing all the birds. He is setting a trap for the birds, and he will allure them with some food, and once the bird comes for the food, the bird will be trapped in the net. And there is a pair of Kulinga birds, and they have their family, they have their babies also, small tiny Kulinga birds. And it so happens that the female Kulinga bird is allured by the trap set by the hunter. She is allured by the food he has strewed on the ground along with the net which he had hiddenly set for trapping the birds. The female Kulinga bird falls into the trap of the hunter, and she is now about to be captured by the hunter from the net. And seeing this, the male Kulinga bird is lamenting very pitiably, sorrowfully, bitterly about his own future and the future of his own babies. And lamenting, seeing the male Kulinga bird sitting on top of the tree, lamenting, the hunter who is hiding just behind the bushes with his deadly arrows, he pierces the male Kulinga bird also, and the male Kulinga bird also falls down, and he also loses his life. So Yamaraj, in the form of a very cognizant Brahmana boy, he is describing these stories to the queens who are lamenting by the dead body of their own husband Suyagya, just to demonstrate the power of time and just to demonstrate the futility of their spending time in lamenting over the dead body of their husband. And sorry, Yamaraj is describing to them that just like the Kulinga bird, male Kulinga bird, he was pitiably lamenting. He didn't care about he didn't care about what next he should do in his life, how to take care of the babies, how to take care of himself for the onward journey of life. So similarly, if you are lamenting, you will also surely meet death. Even if you keep lamenting for thousands of years, the dead body is not going to get alive. Suyagya is not going to come back to you. And in the process, you will lose your own bodies also. And as we study in the scriptures again and again, this human form of life, which is very rare to find for the living entities, if they don't use it for God realization, they don't use it for their own highest welfare, then it is like a wasted opportunity. So Yamraj is counseling them about the fact of life. And now we are discussing how Hiranyakashipu, who is a very selfish, egotistic and proud person, he is telling this philosophy of spiritual, of the spirit soul to his own nephews, his own mother, his brother's wife. And we hear again and again, the purpose of philosophy is transformation of heart. It is not just reciting big verses from the scriptures. It is not about great oratorship and influencing the audience, the thousands of people sitting in front of you by your proficiency and prolific language, command over language, and churning emotions in the hearts of people while speaking some pastimes of Lord. The purpose of philosophy is transformation of heart, and Krishna describes in 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Vedescha sarver ahameva vedyo. All the Vedas are meant for God realization, and God realization, the realization of our eternal spiritual nature, our eternal spiritual connection with God, and ultimately serving all the other living entities, having the knowledge that all the living entities are parts and parcel of God, and they are loved by Krishna or God as much as he loves each and every living entity, and all of them are equal to him. So when one receives this knowledge, then he acts accordingly, and he lives his life according to the principles laid down in the scriptures. And this story, sometimes stories can do what philosophical talks cannot do. Like this Suyagya story is being told by Yamraj in the form of a very childish kind of person, and that attracts the hearts of people. And we see that destiny is very powerful. Power of God is manifested in the laws of karma. Even a small, tiny, insignificant mosquito, or even very trivial incident can kill a person. Just like we see many times we encounter some incidents, we read about some happenings. A person is just sitting in his house and he falls dead the next moment. And somebody who has undergone a very serious traumatic disease or some accident which was such a major catastrophic event that no one would imagine that a person would be alive who has faced such an incident. So we see wealthiest of men in the world, they had the desire to prolong their life, and they had the desire to be disease free. They had the desire to revive their bodies even after death. You see the Egyptian pyramids, they were carved, and the kings, if we see the Egyptian pyramids, we'll see that the kings were preparing for the life after death. They felt that the spirit never leaves the body, and in the future maybe the body will come alive if there is some process. So the bodies were preserved in a very scientific manner. The bodies were preserved in some medicinal herbs and some wrappings around the body so that the insects won't eat the body away. And they will arrange all kinds of drinks and food stuff and jewelry and the statues of soldiers around the tomb of the king, around the mummy of the king. And everything was just like how the king was alive and he was enjoying his life very nicely, and those things were kept around the body of the mummy in the form of maybe wooden or stone carvings, something like that. And this quest for conquering death has been going on in the human society since a very long time. Recently also, you see there is research going on, and now we see people are changing the organs of their bodies, and the organs are being manufactured now by a very innovative process called 3D imprinting. So the organ is manufactured of some artificial material using a very sophisticated software called 3D printing, and that organ is implanted in the body. That organ is transplanted in the body, and the organ hopes to function normally. We see the fiction movie Frankenstein, and that movie also describes how one scientist, he put all the different organs together in a dead body, and he tried to put life into that body by some chemical processes, and the body came alive, and the result was a very catastrophic event for the person who manufactured the who created the living being out of dead organs. That living being destroyed the entire family of the person who gave so-called birth to that dead body organs coming together. So we see this quest for being immortal, living life which is a very prolonged and stress-free, trouble-free life is inherent to each and every living entity. Everyone wants to live a life like that, and desire of each and every living entity to be immortal is not something artificial. We hear from the scriptures, from the Vedas, that the living entity, the soul, is immortal. Krishna describes in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita to Arjun about the nature of the immortality of the soul. And when we hear about the immortality, then the question is how do we go about attaining the platform of immortality? Is it by some scientific inventions, or by prolonging the duration of life, or by putting life into a dead body again, trying to do research on that line, or creating a situation where the decay of the body will be minimal? So these are different propositions, but ultimately Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Mrityu sarva haraschaham. So there is no created being till now who hasn't met death. Kalosmi lokakshayakrit pravruddha. Krishna tells in 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that I am the time personified who steals away everything, who robs away everything from a living entity in the form of death. So the ultimate what we can say way to become immortal, to attain the immortality of the soul, is to revive our eternal spiritual relationship with the person who is spiritual being, this topmost spiritual being, Lord Krishna. Krishna's Swarup is described by Lord Brahmadev as Satchidananda Vigraha, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And to revive that relationship, we have to undergo a process of transformation, and that process is described as the yoga. Yoga means to connect with the Supreme Being. And there are different paths recommended for this yoga. One of them is Karma Yoga, second one is Jnana Yoga, third one is Dhyana Yoga, that is Ashtanga Yoga. And the most effective and the most powerful of all and the highest of all is called Bhakti Yoga. So we follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga as recommended by Lord Sri Krishna. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. So we have to think about Lord Krishna, become his devotee, worship him, offer our prayers, love, service to him, offer our obeisances, pranams to him. And then surely it is Krishna's assurance that we will attain the same spiritual nature as that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, and the living entity can enjoy the benefits of immortality and a life full of bliss in the company of Lord Sri Krishna. And it is very interesting if we analyze, Hiranyakashipu, he also wanted to become immortal. And the path and the process he chose was a very arduous process, and it was not sanctioned by the scriptures. It wasn't sanctioned, it wasn't any authorized process. He worshipped Lord Brahmadev because he thought that Lord Brahma is the most powerful person in this universe. He has created this universe, and he has lifespan which goes on in trillions of years. So if I worship him and I please him, then maybe he can grant me such a prolonged life. Maybe he can make me immortal also. And with such intentions, he performed severe austerities. And his austerities, we will be studying further. He stood on one leg for 60,000 years. And such commendable austerities he performed, but the motive was wrong. And he wanted to become immortal in his terms. And when he asked Lord Brahma that you make me immortal, so Brahmadev said, I am not immortal, and how can I give you the benediction of immortality? So he tried to dodge the possibility of him meeting death by creating certain situations, by asking for boons that he will not die inside the house, outside the house, nor a weapon which is nor any weapon or any instrument of killing. He won't die during the day or at night. He won't die in the air. He won't die on the earth or in the sky. Neither by human nor by an animal. So he tried to create such a situation that no one will be able to kill him. But finally, when it is the plan of God, it is the plan sanctioned by Lord Krishna, he himself appeared in a very wonderful and ferocious form of Lord Nrsingadev, and he killed Hiranyakashipu, and he met all the requirements which were set by Hiranyakashipu, that he won't die inside, outside, on the earth, in the sky. So we see that no matter how much we try to dissuade and avoid the control and subjugation to the Supreme Lord, we are helpless. Everyone has to meet the inevitable happening, that is in the form of death. So we said that Krishna, he meets devotees in the form of his very beautiful form of Sham Sundar at the time of death, and he takes them to the spiritual world, his own spiritual abode. And for people who are not dedicated to serve him, they have to face their own karma. They have to come again and again in the whirlpool of this sarga, of this birth and death cycle again and again. And we talk about death. Why do we talk about death so much? Because each and every person is fearful of death, and he wants to avoid death in one way or the other. And there is a reason why one wants to avoid death. One reason is that the soul, the Atma, is immortal. So when the soul identifies with this material body, and he thinks that this body is his own self, he doesn't want his body to get destroyed. And the more the living entity is attached to the body, the more pain he feels at the time of death. So we again and again hear that at the time of death, the pain experienced by a living entity who is leaving the body is like thousands of scorpions biting him all at once. And that is the pain each and every living entity has to experience and suffer at the time of death. So we see we are living in a tiny house, which may be a rented house, an apartment or a bungalow, or maybe a hotel suite, which is a very luxurious one. And the longer we stay there, the longer we try to be happy in that accommodation, the more we are getting attached to the facility. So if we have spent a very prolonged and luxurious life in this body and we want the enjoyment to continue, then the pain becomes as much painful. And we see how like emotionally attached we become to a house we are staying. We don't want to vacate a house where we have stayed for 5 years because we are attached to it. We have memories staying in that house. Similarly, the soul has memories living in a body which is awarded to him to fulfill his desires according to the karma he has performed. And that is the reason everyone is fearful of death, because he feels that the enjoyment will stop after I leave this body. And 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it describes how the transmigration of body keeps happening. And the transmigration of body cannot be perceived. Vimudha nanu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam. A living entity, according to the modes of material nature he is controlled by, he transmigrates from one body to another. And this can be recognized by a person who has the eyes of knowledge. Pashyanti jnana chakshushaha vimudha nanu pashyanti. The fools, those who are not having this spiritual knowledge, they cannot recognize the transmigration of the soul from one body to another. They don't believe in the life after death. And Krishna calls them Vimudhas, complete fools. Vimudha nanu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. And if we get these jnana chakshus by reading from the scriptures, by association of saintly people, then just the knowledge of having just the knowledge that we are eternal souls and we don't have any connection, it doesn't it will help to a certain extent, but it doesn't complete the purpose of knowing the transmigration. The purpose of knowing transmigration is ultimately to stop transmigration, stop taking birth again and again, and then the soul can achieve the benefits of immortality and the spiritual life which is full of bliss in association with Krishna. And to do that, we have been instructed by the sages, by the spiritual teachers, by Lord Krishna himself about the process of Bhakti Yoga to spiritualize our existence by giving Krishna place in our life, by prioritizing our life to serve Krishna. And that is the lesson we get from this story. And even though Hiranyakashipu, no matter how much he tried, he couldn't become immortal. Srila Prabhupada tells in this purport that no matter all the technology, all the advances, all the inventions and innovations we create in this material world, on the dint of our intelligence, without recognizing the presence of Lord Krishna's hand in everything we do, then we will meet frustration. We see healthcare is advancing so much. We are into heart transplants, liver transplants, lung transplants. Someone transplanted brain also experimentally, and so many medical drugs and equipments, they are being invented, but in the same proportion, the diseases which a human being cannot control, they are also increasing. A tiny virus cannot be controlled by the entire human civilization. We have to spend billions of dollars for the vaccine, which to fight a virus which we cannot see. And time and again, history has revealed that all these attempts will be frustrated, and it won't be sufficient to salvage the humanity. So the ultimate shelter is to live a God-conscious life, and realize the immortality of the soul, and that will give us the highest benefit of life. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। हरे कृष्ण।